My name is Marin Ashcroft and I'm 28. For 8 straight years, my parents threw my younger sister's birthday party on my birthday. The cake had her name piped across it. My name wasn't even on the napkins. Brie was the miracle. I was the girl who happened to already be standing there. When I turned 18, I finally said it out loud in front of 40 relatives, while my mother stood frozen holding the cake knife. But here's what nobody in that yard understood. The birthdays were never the cruelest chapter. That knocked on my door 10 years later, wearing my parents' faces, carrying the apology I'd spent my whole life waiting for. It came with a price tag, and the price was my sister's future. Welcome back to the quiet room, where the people who never raised their voice finally get to tell the loudest parts of their story. If you've ever kept a family standing while nobody noticed you were the one holding it up, this one's for you. Tell me where you're listening from, and subscribe, because stories like this rarely end where you think. Mine starts with pink balloons. It ends in a small office with a box of tissues nobody touched. We lived at the edge of a small Pennsylvania town, in a house with a crooked oak tree my father always meant to trim and never did. Before I turned 10, I'd have told you my family was ordinary. My mother, Renee, worked the bakery counter downtown. My father, Walt, repaired heating systems and said maybe a dozen words a day. I was the daughter who colored inside the lines and never made a mess anyone had to clean up. Even those early years had a shape, and the shape was silence. 3 times between my 6th birthday and my 9th, my mother went to the hospital with a rounding stomach and came home with empty arms and a locked-door face. Nobody explained it to me. My father would rest a hand on my shoulder and say, "Go easy on your mother this week." So I went easy. I packed my own lunches. I forged her signature on permission slips because asking felt like too much noise. I learned that a good daughter was one you could forget was even home. I got so skilled at it that my 3rd grade teacher once marked me absent while I sat 2 rows from her desk. You think disappearing is a favor you're doing your family. You don't yet know some favors get collected for the rest of your life. For my 9th birthday, my mother baked a lemon cake with my name in blue icing, and my father sang off-key while the candles dripped wax onto the frosting. I remember thinking, in the uncomplicated way 9-year-olds think, that this was simply what a family was: cake, off-key singing, a mother who wasn't tired that day. I didn't know it was a closing scene. It turned out to be the last birthday that belonged entirely to me, because in the middle of my 10th, my mother stood up from a lawn chair, gripped the picnic table, and everything changed before the sun went down. My 10th birthday was a backyard cookout. 6 kids, a folding table, my grandmother Opal frosting cupcakes inside. My mother was 7 months pregnant, and nobody had let themselves say the word baby out loud, not after everything before it. Mid-bite into a hot dog, I watched her rise with one hand pressed low, her paper plate sliding off her lap in a way I still see when I close my eyes. Her water had broken 9 weeks early. My father drove her off with the streamers still taped to the porch rail. My sister was born that night by emergency surgery, 3 pounds, 4 ounces, small enough to fit across both of my father's palms. They named her Brie. That evening, at Opal's kitchen table, she lit a candle stub on a leftover cupcake and told me to make a wish anyway. I wished for my sister to live. I blew it out. I sealed the deal. Be careful what you wish for on a birthday candle. Mine came true completely, and I've never once regretted the wish itself. I need that on record before I tell you what came after. My sister lived. The nurses called her a little miracle, and my mother took those words the way a drowning woman grabs a rope thrown from shore. 3 losses, 3 bracelets that never got worn home, and now a heartbeat in a plastic box, arriving on the exact date her living daughter had arrived 10 years earlier. My mother decided that meant something. What she decided it meant would cost me every birthday I had left in that house, and it would eventually cost Brie far more. Brie spent 6 weeks in the neonatal unit. My parents basically moved into that hospital. I moved into Opal's spare room. I was 10, running my own life like a tiny accountant. One Sunday, a nurse glanced at me doing homework in the corner and told my mother, "She's such an easy kid, you'd forget she was here." My mother smiled, the first time in weeks. And I did the arithmetic a 10-year-old does without realizing it. Being invisible made my mother happy. Needing things made her tired. So I decided to become the easiest child in the county. That would be my gift to everyone. In February, they brought Bree home and the whole street came out to watch. I held the door open. That was my job and I did it well. The miracle came home and the shrine went up faster than the storm windows. Our church pinned Bree's photo to the prayer board, God's little fighter. Casseroles arrived for months, as if my parents had accomplished something instead of simply survived it. Even at 10, I noticed I appeared in that story only as a date on a calendar, the party that got interrupted. Around Easter, my mother framed Bree's hospital bracelet and hung it over the couch, in the exact spot where my 4th grade school photo used to be. Mine would move to the piano, she said, just until she found a better frame. It never came. My photo stayed on the piano until the piano got sold, then it lived in a drawer. The bracelet stayed on the wall. In our house, you could hang proof of nearly losing a child. Proof of having an ordinary one who ate her vegetables went in a drawer. The June I turned 11, I asked for a lemon cake and 3 friends over, a small ask, because I'd already learned to keep my ask small. I came downstairs that morning to find the backyard already full of pink. Balloons on the fence, streamers on the oak, and across the patio a banner. BREE. Her first birthday. Ours, technically, but nobody used that word. By noon there were 30 people in our yard, cooing over a baby and Tool who'd never remember any of it. There was a cake shaped like the number 1, a slideshow of hospital photos set to piano music. My 3 friends stood around holding presents with my name on them, slowly absorbed into an audience for someone else's resurrection story. My cake, and my mother did bake me one, was store-brand vanilla, served after the slideshow, from the far end of the table. Someone's aunt asked whose birthday it was, too. That's the word I still remember. That night I asked my mother, flatly, why Bree's party got to be on my day. She looked at me with genuine surprise, as if the question itself were a betrayal. "You've had 10 birthdays already, Marin," she said. She almost never got one. Then she kissed my head and went to bed. I stood alone in that kitchen doing arithmetic with the only heart I had. 10 birthdays was apparently my share. I'd used mine up. I was 11, and I genuinely believed I owed a debt, paid in days with my name on them. My father, meanwhile, lived about 6 feet away at the grill, tongs in hand, face arranged into pleasant fog. Not a cruel man. Something that costs a family almost as much. A man who saw everything and had already calculated what noticing would cost him. Over the following years, the birthday grew rules the way a river grows banks, slow, then permanent. Bree opened presents first because she cried if she didn't. Bree picked the theme. Bree helped blow out my candles, then simply blew them out herself while the room applauded. And I got assigned to her, watch her by the dessert table, walk her around the yard when she screamed. I became unpaid staff at my own birthday, and the tips were terrible. Once, at 12, my father found me alone in the garage and handed me a wrapped model horse, quiet as contraband. "Don't tell your mother," he said. "It'll hurt her feelings." I thanked him. I meant it too, which is the part that stings now. A gift you have to hide isn't a gift, it's a settlement. Only one person in that family ever refused to settle. Grandma Opal, 5'2", smelling of lavender and cigarettes she swore she'd quit, owned a Polaroid camera that became the most important object of my childhood. At my 11th birthday, Bree's coronation, Opal watched the whole afternoon, arms crossed like a building inspector. That night she called me onto the porch, sat me on the step. Flash. She waved the photo dry, nodded like it had passed inspection. "Somebody ought to have proof you turned 11, she said. She did it again the next year, and the year after, same porch, same step, same flash. At home, she kept the photos in a shoebox labeled in her slanted handwriting, "Proof of Marin." I didn't learn until later that she also fought for me every year in low voices at the driveway. One afternoon, Renee, I once heard through the screen door, "That's all I'm asking, one afternoon for the other one." My mother's answer, "You of all people know what that baby survived." Opal saw me. She kept a shoebox of proof. But one witness can't stop a religion from spreading, and in our house, my sister was steadily becoming one. 12 was the year my cake quietly became cupcakes, because Bree's cake was a 2-tier castle and Marin doesn't mind. 13 was the year relatives' cards started arriving addressed only to Bree. My Aunt Denise sent me a separate card that year, a week late. "Sorry, got my dates confused." She hadn't. The dates were identical. That was the whole problem, invisible to anyone who only ever heard my mother's version. 13 was also the year I started a private tally, How many times either parent said my actual name out loud on my birthday? Not happy birthday, just my name. The year I turned 13, the count at midnight was 0. The year I turned 14, I stopped counting altogether, and I'd love to say it was self-respect. Really, it was a pizza box. More on that shortly. While I was learning to disappear, my sister was learning something too, and I want to be careful because she was 4 and 4-year-olds aren't villains. The spring she turned 4, I took second place at the science fair with a homemade watercycle model. I set it on the dining table, ribbon and all, and for one dinner my parents looked at something I'd made. Bree watched from her booster seat. The next morning the clouds were torn loose, the tubing snapped. She hadn't even hidden it well. When my mother found me holding the wreckage, she winced, then delivered the spell she'd cast 100 times. She's been through so much, honey, the only prayer our family seemed to know by heart. That same year, Bree bit her preschool teacher hard enough to leave a mark. The school suggested an evaluation. So did our pediatrician. My mother switched doctors within the week and told the church ladies the old one didn't understand a preemie. She didn't want a diagnosis. A diagnosis would mean the miracle had a flaw. So the flaw got a tutor, and later the flaw got a checkbook, and the bill kept rolling downhill toward all of us. For my 14th birthday I asked for one thing, engineered like a small heist pizza, just the 4 of us, 1 hour, no balloons. I asked my father man to man over the lawnmower. "You've got it, kiddo," he said, and looked me in the eye. The morning of, my mother remembered a dance rehearsal for Bree, not even the recital, weeks off still. The schedule folded in its usual direction. My father came to my room. "We'll grab the pizza to go," he said. "Eat it on the way to watch your sister." I rode to a dance studio on my 14th birthday with a takeout box on my knees, then sat alone in the parking lot by choice, eating 2 slices while the sun went down. At home, my father stuck a candle into a cold, congealed slice. He lit it, hopeful, as if an apology were something you could accomplish with a lighter. I blew it out to be polite, and somewhere in that exhale, I finished growing up. My father wasn't silent because he disagreed quietly. He was silent because silence was cheaper, and I was the account it kept getting billed to. The next year I told a school counselor, Ms. Reyes, the whole thing, factual, no tears. She believed me and did her job, called my parents in. My mother arrived with a potted mum and the miracle story fully loaded, cried in the right places, said, "Teenage girls and their mothers, you know how it gets." My file picked up a note about adjustment and sensitivity. The school moved on. Ms. Reyes caught me in the hallway after, and to her credit, didn't pretend otherwise. "Keep your grades up, Marin," she said. "Doors open at 18 that nobody else can close on you." That sentence became load-bearing. The spring I turned 15, hunting for my birth certificate to get a work permit, I found my mother sitting on the storage room floor in the dark, a shoebox in her lap. Inside, 3 hospital bracelets, never worn home, each labeled with first and middle names, started and crossed out and started again, names I'd never once heard spoken, for 3 children nobody had ever told me to grieve. My mother didn't hear me come in. She ran her thumb along one bracelet, over and over, her face doing something worse than crying. It was doing nothing at all. I backed out on my socks, 15 years old, holding a truth too heavy for my age. My mother wasn't celebrating Bree. She was apologizing to 3 babies who never came home, and Bree was the altar closest at hand. Understanding that didn't fix one thing about my life, but it rearranged the furniture inside me. You can't purely hate a drowning woman. You also can't keep letting her stand on your shoulders forever. That birthday, on Opal's porch, she didn't put the shoebox lid back on right away. "A miracle shouldn't cost a child," she said, flat as a carpenter's level. "I fought your mother every year of your life and I lost every year. So we're done trying to fix them. We're going to build you a door instead." She drove me to the diner where her friend Marlene worked, and I filled out a work permit application with Opal's own pen. A savings account opened that Monday, my name only, statements mailed to her address. Every tip went in. Inside the shoebox lid, Opal wrote a date in pencil, my 18th birthday. We weren't planning a party. We were planning an exit 3 years out. 16 was supposed to be my driving test. Both parents said they'd come. Neither did. A furniture store had cast a comer. Sile call for cute kids, and Bree needed a chaperone, and somehow that meant both of them. Opal took me instead. I passed on the first try. That evening, store cake at the kitchen table, Opal set 1 cupcake and 1 candle in front of me. "This one's a boundary." Bree reached for it. Opal moved it calmly. My 6-year-old sister grabbed her plastic fork and raked it across my cheek. There was blood, mine. My mother scooped Brie up and turned to me, holding my own face, and said, "What did you do to her?" I still have a faint scar by my left eye. Relatives were told I fell. That night I understood the house rule nobody said aloud. Brie's feelings outranked my skin. By 7, Brie had gotten too big for the world to keep absorbing. Second grade recess, she shoved a girl off the top of the swing's arc. The girl's wrist broke in 2 places. The school demanded a written evaluation this time. My mother pulled Brie to half days, hired a tutor, told the congregation public school couldn't handle a spirited child. My father wrote the tutor's checks, and the other family's urgent care bill, and said nothing at any volume. Around then, passing the bathroom with the door cracked, I watched 7-year-old Brie on the step stool at the mirror, rehearsing her face, chin down, eyes wide, practicing out loud twice. I've been through so much. She'd taken my mother's prayer and turned it into a tool, the way children turn everything you hand them into a tool. Nobody had ever handed her anything else. Everyone kept asking what was wrong with Brie. Nobody asked what we were building her out of. 17, over meatloaf, my mother laid out the plan for the rest of my life. "We think community college here in town makes the most sense," she said, passing the green beans. "You could live at home, help with Brie, that's what family is." Then, warmly, "You're so good with her." My father studied his plate like there'd be a quiz. I had one long, quiet moment where the rest of my life stood in the doorway wearing an apron. 25 and driving Brie to auditions. 30 and covering shifts at the bakery. Permanent, unpaid staff of the Miracle, room and board included. I said, "We'll see," in exactly the voice she'd trained into me. Then I went to my room, and by midnight, paid application fees at 3 nursing programs 100 miles away. The girl nobody in that house had ever really looked at had learned one skill better than anyone else under that roof, and finally aimed it somewhere that mattered. 11 months to the date written inside the shoebox lid, my mother hung a banner. Grandma Opal turned 70 that same week, and the whole scattered family aimed itself at our town at once. Opal negotiated terms herself, 1 party, Renee, 1 afternoon, both girls' names on it. My mother agreed, sounding like the injured party. I hoped just an inch. 18 felt too big to erase, cap and gown 2 weeks behind me, my acceptance letter hidden at Opal's like contraband. The Friday before, I watched from my window as my parents hung a custom banner together, careful as people hanging Christmas lights. Gold letters on cream, celebrating our miracle. 1 name underneath. 10 years of practice, and they still only spelled it one way. BREE. Saturday, 40 people filled our yard. The cake was 2 tiers, bakery maid reading "Happy Birthday, Brie." No second cake. On the gift table, 1 plain envelope with my name in my mother's handwriting. My aunt did a lap of the yard and came back to my mother, voice pitched low but not low enough. "Renee, where's Marin's cake? It's her 18th. My mother, sliding deviled eggs onto a platter without looking up. "Oh, Marin's an adult now. She doesn't need all the fuss." Later, my father tapped his bottle for attention and announced they were remodeling. Brie was finally getting the big girl room with the window seat. My room, since she'll be moving out anyway. That's how I learned my departure had already been folded into the family plan, repurposed before I'd even left. Then Opal knelt in front of me with the Polaroid raised. 18, sweet pea. Brie crossed the yard like weather. "Me first." Opal steady. "In a minute, sweetheart, this one's Marin's turn." My sister grabbed the camera by the strap still around a 70-year-old woman's neck and yanked until it gave, Opal's knee hitting the patio brick, and threw the camera down onto the concrete. It came apart in pieces, the half-developed photo of me flapping out, white and ruined. Silence, 40 people staring. My mother scooped Brie up, already narrating. "She's overwhelmed, it's been such a big day." My father went for the broom. Nobody looked at Opal on the bricks. Nobody looked at me. Something in me, folded smaller for 8 straight years, finally tore along the crease. I helped Opal into a chair, then went upstairs, brought down the taped shoebox, and set it beside the pink foil mountain. "I have something to sh." "Ow, everybody," I said, and pulled the tape loose. I laid Opal's Polaroids out in a row, 8 of them. "This is me turning 11. My grandmother took it on her porch at 9 at night because the banner at the actual party said Brie. 12 cupcakes because my cake got complicated. 13, the year the cards stopped coming with my name. 14, I don't have a party photo. 16, look closely. There's a mark by my eye. Everyone was told I fell. I got that taking a fork to the face over a cupcake. I turned toward my parents, pointing at the living room window. There's a bracelet framed on that wall where my school picture used to be. Ask them when it went back up. Ask whose name is on the cake at my own 18th birthday. My mother reached for the old rope. Marin, honey, you've had so many birthdays, and she. I existed the whole time, I said, loud enough for the fence line. You didn't just lose 3 babies and get handed a miracle. You lost 3 babies and threw away the daughter you already had, and I almost never got a mother. We don't put that on a cake. Bree's voice rose from near the presence, honestly bewildered. Why is everyone looking at her? And 40 people heard the whole machine say the quiet part out loud in its own mouth. I gathered the photographs. I left the envelope. Give it to the guest of honor, I said, and went inside to pack. My aunt found me packing and didn't try any version of It's a Misunderstanding. She wrote her number on a gas receipt and folded it into my hand. You call me kiddo. The only blockade at the door was my mother, arms crossed, mascara gone to weather. You're really doing this to Bree, she said. I looked at her a long second, then stepped around her carefully, the way you step around wet paint. I slept that night in Opal's spare room, the freest air I'd ever breathed. 6 days later I was on a bus with a duffel, a shoebox, and a savings account 3 years in the making. By the end of that summer, my old bedroom was already pink. A shared apartment with a girl named Priya, who became the sister I got to choose. Community college while waitressing, then nursing school, then boards. By 22 I was a registered nurse. I work pediatrics now, at a children's hospital, an irony I've said out loud in therapy more than once. I spend shifts making sure sick kids get seen, and making sure their healthy siblings get a popsicle and someone asking about their day. Birthdays got rebuilt from the studs up. Every year, Priya bakes a lemon cake from Opal's recipe, my name in blue icing, every letter mine. The first year she did it, I had to leave the kitchen for a minute and stand in the hallway until my chest stopped feeling too small for my lungs. Nobody made me disappear for it. Nobody said anything about anybody else being through so much. It was, simply, my cake, on my day, and it took me the better part of a decade to learn how to just sit at a table and let that be enough. Contact with my parents thinned to holiday cards. Opal visited by bus until my cousins started driving her instead. The family shifted on its foundation. My uncle stopped visiting entirely. The church crowd drifted, the prayer board changed families. The shrine was losing its congregation, but the thing we'd built on that altar was becoming a teenager, discovering the world doesn't clap on command. The world grades harder than that, and my sister had never once been handed a pencil. The reports came through Opal and my aunt in pieces, each season a little worse. Cut from cheer for slapping a teammate, a new travel team 2 towns over, a driving instructor's windshield cracked by a thrown water bottle, my father's checkbook handled it. Every school shuffle came wrapped in the same explanation. That child has been through so much. My father started sleeping in the den. 26 years of marriage held together by a story neither of them could afford to stop telling. Then one Tuesday in October, my phone rang twice within the hour. Bree had put a girl in the hospital. Sophomore year, varsity volleyball. A junior named Talia was voted team captain, a vote Bree assumed was a formality. After practice, in the locker room, my sister slammed Talia's head into a locker edge, fracturing her cheekbone. A hallway camera caught the calm walk-in, the calm walk-out, calm that turned it from a scuffle into a case number. 15, charged with felony assault. Talia's family told the prosecutor they didn't want a child buried, they wanted one stopped. Before deciding between home probation and residential treatment, the judge ordered a full psychological evaluation. A court-appointed psychologist, Dr. Callahan, would interview everyone who knew this family, parents, grandmother, and the adult sister who'd lived inside that house for 18 years. For a decade, my parents had outrun every evaluation ever suggested. Now one arrived with a judge standing behind it, and there was no doctor left to switch. I got the letter and sat with it a long time. There was exactly one person alive who'd watched that whole assembly line run start to finish, from inside the room. Me. That Saturday, my parents drove 100 miles north, unannounced. My father's hair had gone the color of dishwater ice. My mother held a bakery box like a passport. I let them in, because 18 years of wiring doesn't rip out cleanly. Marin, we failed you, my mother said. I've gone over it and over it. I failed you, I see it now. I want you to understand what those words did to me. There's a room inside you that never fully stops waiting, and the door swung open so fast it banged the wall. Then my father cleared his throat and set the actual price on the table. The evaluator's going to call you. This Dr. Callahan, if you could just keep the birthdays out of it. Tell her we're a normal family that hit a rough patch. Residential would destroy your sister. My mother squeezed my hand on cue. Do this and we can finally be a family again. Then, softer, she's been through so much, Marin, and you've always been so strong. There it was. The apology I'd waited my whole life for, and all I had to do to keep it was disappear one more time. I told them I needed time, and used it to drive to the detention center, because I wasn't deciding anything about my sister from 100 miles away. It was the first time we'd ever sat alone in a room together. 15, in a sweatshirt with no drawstrings, she looked at me like I was a vending machine that might still have something left. Nobody visits, she opened, then cataloged her grievances, the food, the rigged vote, the girl who provoked her. I kept waiting for the part where she mentioned a broken face in a hospital bed. It never came. It genuinely wasn't on her list. They'll fix it, she shrugged. Dad knows people. But right at the end, with visiting time nearly gone, she picked at the table edge and asked, all the metal drained from her voice. Why did everyone stop coming to my birthdays? She genuinely didn't know. Nobody had ever told her why the world kept quietly cooling around her, because answering honestly meant admitting somebody built that weather on purpose. I drove home understanding the thing I'd have to say out loud. Lying to Dr. Callahan wouldn't save Bree. It would only repaint the walls of the room she was already locked inside. I brought it to Opal's kitchen table, the shoebox between us like a rosary. She listened without once telling me what to do. Grandmothers who love you hand you the right question, not the answer. When you were 11, sitting on my porch step at 9 at night, she finally asked, what did you need some adult to do? Tell the truth, I said, to someone who could actually do something. She nodded slowly. Well, now you're the adult. Then, the same sentence from 10 years earlier, aimed somewhere new. A miracle shouldn't cost a child. That was true about you. It's true about her too. I called Dr. Callahan's office that afternoon. I drove down believing my parents thought I was coming to save the family story. I was coming to end it. My mother smoothed my collar in the waiting room, whispering, "We'll all be okay, sweetheart." She still believed I'd read the script. I sat across from a calm woman with a legal pad and told her everything flat and factual, the way I give a shift change report. The 3 losses nobody could grieve out loud, the banner, 8 birthdays cataloged in order, the fork and the scar, the pediatrician switched, the evaluations dodged, every consequence bought off the shelf before it reached my sister's hands. The sentence she rehearsed in a mirror at 7, and the question she asked me through no drawstrings at 15. I didn't make her sound like a monster because she isn't one. She's assembled. Every adult she's ever met either worshipped her or invoiced her. I recommended residential treatment, full program, with mandatory family counseling for all 4 of us, because all 4 of us were the actual case. When I came out, my mother read my face before I spoke. What did you tell her? The truth, all of it. I watched the apology drain out of her eyes like water finding a drain. You've destroyed this family, she said, quiet, which made it worse. I picked up my coat. No, Mom, I finally stopped helping you hide the wreck. I existed the whole time. This time, it's on the record. 6 weeks later, the court ordered 9 months of residential treatment, probation until 18, and mandatory family counseling. For the first time, my sister was looked at by professionals whose approval couldn't be purchased. 2 months in, my father moved into an apartment near the fairgrounds. The silence that held their marriage together couldn't survive a room where the whole job was saying things out loud. He later wrote me the longest letter I've ever gotten from him. One line of which I keep in the shoebox now. I told myself staying quiet kept the peace, but it just kept moving the bill onto your side of the table. The relatives finally boiled over. My aunt told me, "We're not mad you finally went off, honey. We're mad it took us that long to see what you were going off about." Both my parents apologized for real eventually, with nothing in either hand this time. My mother's came that spring on Opal's porch, no script. "You were right," she said. "I couldn't look at it, so I made you carry it. I'm so sorry, Marin." I believed her. Believing and trusting are different renovations, and only one was finished. So I didn't say I forgave her. Instead, coffee once a month, just the 2 of us. You don't get to hand my childhood back to me in a nicer edition. She nodded, and we've kept it up since. Some of those coffees were terrible, long silences, old reflexes creeping back into her voice before she caught them. Two were almost easy, the kind where we talked about nothing important, and it didn't feel like a performance either of us had rehearsed. I believe you're sorry, I told her at the first one. But sorry has to be an address you actually live at, not somewhere you visit. Last June I turned 28 in my own apartment, Priya pulling a lemon cake from the oven, half my unit crowded around the counter, my aunt on video call. Opal came too, 80 now, camera strap around her neck like a metal new camera, same shoebox. She sat me on my fire escape, the closest thing to a porch, and the flash went off. 9, she said, waving the photo dry. Proof of Marin. This year, for the first time, I mailed a birthday card to the step-down program where my sister was finishing her senior year, to a girl turning 18 on the exact day I turned 28. I kept it simple. Happy birthday to both of us. Love, M. Something came back. One short line in handwriting I'd never once seen aimed at me. I laughed out loud alone at my own mailbox. Nobody claps here either. It's not a bridge, might be a plank. We'll see what we build. Here's what 8 stolen birthdays taught me. Love that requires you to disappear was never love at all. It was rent. And you don't owe rent on a life that already belongs to you. That's my story. 8 borrowed birthdays, 1 shoebox of proof, and a truth that cost me the family I always wanted, and handed me back the person I actually am. If somebody you love has ever had their candles blown out by everybody else's noise, check on them this year. Better yet, bake them their own cake. If this story stayed with you, drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.